Welcome to this special edition of the YAHOWAH blog. I am your host, Craig Winn. This is your co-host. This is Wookie Winn. He is the chief in charge of security around these places. As I have shared in my series on the truth about Islam and Muhammad, Wookie, by being in charge of security, is here to warn all would-be Muslims that they ought not come for any attempt to take our lives. Wookie will intervene. Well, Wookie may be 1,000th in line to intervene, and there may be 1,000 Malak that will act first, but nonetheless, Wookie will be there. You've been warned. Actually, this is a serious program. We're in our second in a series of the presentation of Yahweh's Choter. And this is the implement that Yahweh explained through the prophet Yeshayah in the 11th chapter of Isaiah, that he was going to deploy to get his people's attention and to explain to them the path home. The Choter is actually an exceptionally important aspect of Yahweh's overall plan. So important that he is imbuing the Choter, as we learned, with the 7 spirits of Yahweh. And these spirits enable the Choter to be uniquely discerning, wise beyond words. He is a man who will make the connections to understand what the world has missed for, well, some 20 to 30 centuries. And he has been given the ability to see the entire picture, God's plan from beginning to end, and then share it with you, and to do so boldly, bluntly, courageously, empowered and strengthened by the very Spirit of Almighty God. And this is particularly important, Yisrael and Yahudim, Israel and Jews, because we're entering a very dangerous time. You already know that Muslims are out to annihilate you and to remove Israel from the face of the earth. You know that it is open hunting season on Jews worldwide. You know, there is more anti-Semitism and rage against God's people in the world today than at any time in all of human history. And you know that the world is on the precipice of erupting into world war, and that things are going to get much worse. What you probably don't know is that you're only 14 months from beginning of the most troubling time in the history of God's people. It's called the Towrah of Jacob, the time of Jacob's troubles. And this period is going to be so horrific, the prophet Yoel says that there is nothing in all of human history to compare to it. And yet, against this onslaught of people worldwide coming after the Jewish people, trying to eliminate the state of Israel, there is a voice being enabled by Yahweh to awaken his people, to reintroduce them to the very name of God that they have erased, to help them come back home, to recognize the actual Messiah and the Son of God, the man who fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim, to open the doorway to life, to perfect you so that you could be part of God's family once again. So here I am, sharing Yahweh's name, reacquainting you with Dode, your Messiah, returning King, and telling you the story that God wants you to hear, the entire story, from beginning to end. Of the Choter, after having told us that he will be the only person in human history to be equipped with the 7 spirits of Yahowah, we read that he will exercise good judgment by seeking to be accurate, to be honest, to be forthright. He's going to be tzedek, be fair and correct in accord with the truth with regard to opening the doorway for the discerning. He will provide proof using sound arguments with everything right out in the open, doing so fairly on behalf of the sincere who are responsive and seeking straightforward answers on the earth. In addition, he will strike verbally, attacking and disabling, confronting, crippling, and incapacitating, sarcastically mocking and chastising, even judging the material realm with the rod and with the staff of his mouth, and thus his voice. And with the spirit of his lips and resulting language, he will devastate the wicked and those who are wrong. Yeshaya, Isaiah 11:4. There is so much to this statement that I thought we would review it before we press on. The thing that distinguishes, well, there's many things that distinguish, but one of the things that distinguish the Choter from all others, this implement that God has chosen and equipped, is that he is a return to the Shavat. The last time a Shavat influenced God's people, they rejected him. His name was Shamuel. You might know him as Samuel. He was the judge who the people of Israel said, "We don't want to listen to you anymore. We want a king to be ruled over like the other Gentile nations." Samuel was so distraught over that he went to Yahweh and he cried. He said, I have disappointed you, and I have failed, and people, they have rejected me. And Yahweh immediately says, no, Samuel. They didn't reject you. They rejected me. And this has really been the state of affairs between the time of Samuel, that means he listens to God, and the time now of Yahweh's Choter being the first Shavat in 3,000 years. I think, Israel, you know the consequence of having chosen to reject Yahweh and not listen to the last Shavat, Samuel, the last judge. The Assyrians had their way with you, as did the Babylonians, then the Macedonians, and the Imperial Romans, and then the Roman Catholics, then the Ottoman Turks, Muslims, and then the Holy Roman Empire, the Nazis, Muslims again, and now progressives. It's been a rough go. I think if I were you, I would choose a different response to this Shavat. Now, this also means that as a Shavat, the Choter is a judge. Like it or not, Israel, God has assigned me in this role, and don't make a mistake in this. There is no one else who has identified the Choter, has written about the Choter, has made any attempt to explain who the Choter is or who qualifies for this role other than myself. And this says that I will be a judge. And as a judge, that means I get to determine, I'm tasked with the responsibility of adjudicating these matters and resolving disputes by either writing a sentence against, declaring a verdict against those who have been guilty of misleading and abusing God's people, which means they'll be dispatched to Sheol, or exonerating them. So this is a very serious declaration that God's making here. He's calling his Choter a judge, a Shabat, by seeking to be accurate, honest, and forthright. Sadak is one of the most important words and one of the most misunderstood words in all of the Hebrew language. It is typically rendered righteous by rabbis because they want to proclaim themselves as such, but that's not its primary meaning. It means to be right, to be correct, to be accurate, to be fair, to be just, to be truthful, which they are not, but Yahweh's Choter is. You see, with God, there is, well, it's nice to be good, but good won't get you in the front door. The thing that opens heaven's door is being right. And you cannot be right about God until you know his name, until you recognize what his son has done for you, until you understand the key elements that comprise God's story from beginning to end. None of which are shared or taught or celebrated in Israel, which is why Yahweh has chosen to deploy his Choter to share these things with you. And it says that he will not only be judgmental and exercise good judgment by being accurate, honest, and forthright with regard to opening the doorway for the discerning. It's actually Dode who opened the doorway to life. I'm playing a role in opening that doorway to God's home. And in this regard, I'm not speaking to everyone. I'm particularly trying to avoid the overtly political and the overtly religious because they're not capable of being discerning. So I'm speaking to those of you who have stopped being pretentious, who are genuinely open and receptive to the truth, and who want to know God again, like to be part of his family. And the doorway that is being opened here, that is described, this is written by Yahshua, Isaiah, is near and dear to him, because when, after being a prophet for a considerable time, Yahshua was invited into Shamaim to meet with Yahweh there. And when he was there, Yahweh opened the door behind him. And Yahshua, I'm sure, thought that with his wonderful relationship and all that he had shared regarding Yahweh, that there would be hundreds of thousands of Israelites standing outside, joyous about that door being open and coming into heaven. But you know how many there were actually there? 0. Not one. And just as Shamuel had lamented that the people had rejected him, Yahshua became quite emotional. And he thought that it was because he had failed. And Yahweh reassured him, no. Not only haven't you failed, Yahshua, I'm going to take you to the future. And you're going to witness how your words, what you have shared about the Choter, what you have written about the restoration of my people, is eventually going to resonate with them. And at just the right moment, in the nick of time, because you will have written, Yahshua, the textbook on proper chotering and how to respond to the Choter. And so Yeshayah has seen that door opened again, and he has seen the results of what we have done together. And it says he's going to provide proof using sound arguments. It is the essence of the books, these books that you can see behind me, 36 that I have written. I posted today on X that I may not have written the most books of any man, but I have written the most important for man. And it is those books that provide sound arguments, that use dialogue and critical thinking, presenting everything out in the open and doing so fairly. I actually invented a different way to present the text of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. It's called an amplified translation. And in that amplified translation, what you will see is that the essence of what God is saying is more accurately and completely conveyed in bold. But then within a parenthetical, I present the most general form of the Hebrew word so that right out in the open, you can copy and paste it into your favorite search engine online and validate the accuracy of the translation. And then within that parenthetical, I amplify it further. So it says here, everything out in the open, doing so fairly, which is from Mishor, by putting everything on the table, on the level, nothing hidden, justly and equitably, in a very forthright and direct manner. And then I will even explain the basis of the word if it has a root. And in this case, Mishor is from me, which means to ponder the implications of, and yashar, of being right, approved, and candid. There's never been a translation presented like this for your edification and enlightenment, for your verification. And then following those translations, there is commentary helping to put it into the proper context and helping the reader understand precisely what God is conveying. But then something that is unique to these books and down to the YAHOWAH blog, using connections, finding the common denominator, making proper associations between the various elements of God's story, so that I could reveal profoundly important insights to you regarding God's nature, his offer, what he is presenting to us and asking in return, and how it all plays out over the course of 6,000 years, so that you know precisely what's going to happen when, as we move forward in time. And in doing so, there are tens of thousands of unique insights, previously unheralded, never prior, with no prior consideration. Also that you might know yourselves and your God more clearly. This says that everything right out in the open, doing so fairly on behalf of the sincere and responsive who are straightforward and looking for answers. Now, this is based upon the verb anah. Anah is in the top 10 to 15 most important actionable words in the Hebrew lexicon. And it speaks of being responsive, of being willing to reply to God, of being open to answers and then answering based upon what you've learned. And so this message that is right out in the open, fair and just, on the table and on the level, again, is not for everyone. God is not trying to save everyone. In fact, he much preferred to exclude most everyone. He's looking for a few right-minded men and women to spend eternity with. And 100% of those individuals will respond to Yahweh in a sincere way. They're going to be open to him, and they're going to be among those who were straightforward in their quest for answers and honest in their reply throughout the earth. There is more to this job, as there was with every prophet, beginning with Moshe. Moshe spent more time dealing with religious and political rebellion amongst the recalcitrant and wayward children of Yisrael than he did even sharing who Yahweh is and what he is offering. Yeshayah was the same. The first 10 chapters of Yeshayah all deal with God's disdain for his people's propensity to be religious and political. So this is a job that every prophet has. You look at Hosea. He was asked to marry a temple prostitute so he could empathize with Yahweh and understand how miserable it is to be around someone who cheats on you all the time with false gods. So my job is twofold. It is to share the truth about God, which I do so with every fiber of my body, an ounce of my strength, revealing to you Yahweh's name, the purpose of the Bereth covenant, the means to enable its benefits through the Moed Mikre, the invitations to be called out and to meet with God, sharing Yahweh's overall timing, introducing you to the marvelous things that your Messiah and King, Dod, has done for you. But I also am tasked with the responsibility as a judge to verbally attack and disable, confront, cripple, and incapacitate. And in the style of the beloved Elia, sarcastically mock, chastise, and ravage the material realm. For those who follow me on X, you will know that, I've been on X now for a little over 2 months, and I have well over 6,000 posts. Most of them are incapacitating, sarcastic, mocking, chastising, very judgmental. And that's my job. There is no way that people will know the truth until they first have their minds cleared of the lies which are so much more prevalent, and particularly a truth about God and his beloved Son, since those lies have been the most prevalent of all. And my job is to maximize the benefit, the quality of the next two harvests, Shabuah and Towrah. And I can't do that without doing a lot of pruning, a lot of hoeing up of weeds, a lot of cultivating the ground so that it is receptive again. And so I'm here to attack religion and politics as much as I'm here to share the truth about Yahweh, his beloved son Dod, and the path he has provided home. So in addition, he will strike, verbally attacking and disabling the material realm. And the tool that Yahweh says that I will use is the rod and the staff of my mouth, which is my voice. Now, this is something that is reasonably new. It's not totally new. I have been doing radio for, I guess now almost 20 years. I had my own syndicated show called Shattering Myths. And I've been doing Yada Yah radio for better part of that entire time. And now we're part of the Yahowah blog. So my voice has been shared both as a rod and a staff, a rod to beat the senselessness out of so many people. In fact, on Shattering Myths, the purpose of the show was to expose the myths associated with religion and politics and militancy, while also sharing the means to become part of God's flock, the staff. But something changed profoundly in mid-December when Yahweh intervened in the midst of our work together and sort of cleaned house. We had a complete changing of the team that would support this work. God said, out with the old and with the new. We have a lot to accomplish, and I need the right people in the right positions. And he did a complete change. And in that meeting with me, I said, I know you like writing books. I like the written word too. We both have a love affair with the written word and the way that it endures and all that you can logically present and share through writing. But we've written enough together. You've written 36 books. The 37th isn't going to make much of a difference. But what will make a difference is if you start using the rod and the staff of your mouth. I want you to start talking to my people. And I want you to look them in the eye. I want you to do this on camera, all as live streams. We're going to start what Yahweh referred to as the Yahweh blog, under the symbol of that menorah, of that lamp that is over my left shoulder. And we did. I think we have well over 150 hours now of live stream programming, all to call Israel back to Yahweh. So they're ready for the family reunion with your Messiah and King, the Son of God, Dode. So the new implement is the rod and the staff of his mouth. And it goes on to say, and with the spirit of his lips. Now, spirit is not thrown in here casually. Yahweh has already told us that as it relates to the Choter, he is empowered with the 7 spirits of Yahweh. And so it is the spirit of Yahweh that is going to use the Choter and speak through him, just as Yahweh spoke through Moshe. With Moshe, he said it was mouth to mouth, from God's mouth through Moshe's mouth. Yahweh was saying something very similar here. His spirit is going to speak through the lips of his Choter. And as a result, he's going to devastate the Rasha, the religious and the political who were wrong, those in rebellion against God. So, as I've shared today, my role in X on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble, as part of the Yahowah blog, is to speak authoritatively on behalf of Yahweh. I am both a condemning voice confronting Islam and Christianity and progressive politics, holding them accountable for all they have done to harm God's people and to hide the truth and to disable and incapacitate their plans, as I am a voice commending the very word of God. I am here to do the best possible job of silencing the purveyors of deceit, of death and destruction. And this is really a job that is ordained by God, not on my behalf. It's my position with God, and in the covenant, I'm immortal. World war is not going to have any effect on me. The attack on God's people will make me sad, but it cannot influence my life. I do it because Yahweh wants a wonderful homecoming. And he wants to minimize the carnage between now and then. So it's my job to try to do all that I can to mitigate those who are calling for world war. And for those who are trying to eradicate Israel and perpetrate genocide on Jews. The inclusion in this, as we talked previously of Shabat, the rod and the staff of his pay mouth, definitely affirms what Yeshayah had to say about the Choter in the conclusion of the 10th chapter. He is unlike anyone, really, since the great prophet, equal parts commending and condemning, excoriating the religious and the political while attesting to Yahweh's marvelous alternative. I am both rod and staff, to purge and to punish the wrongdoing and to be productive and fruitful. So right from the beginning, some 20 plus years ago, I came to realize that what matters with God is being tzedak, right. This search for truth would take place in the mind, not in the heart. Is one of the lessons that I shared again painfully with Israel again this morning, as Israel is considering another horrific deal with the devil, as they trade many thousands of convicted murderers and terrorists for a few remaining hostages who are alive and bodies of those who are dead. That what they have done is they have chosen from the heart over the head. And by making these concessions and negotiating with the Muslims who want to annihilate them, what they have assured is that by saving a few lives, they not only put millions in jeopardy, they assure that tens of thousands will die. It is not a trade that one can make. And I know it is incredibly sad after 1,200 precious Israeli lives were snuffed out, many raped, many tortured, and savagely murdered, some burned alive, some mutilated before they would die. That it's hard to live with oneself knowing there were another 250 captives under Islamic control by tormenting Muslim malcontents in Gaza, and not want to trade to release them. But the head should have known that by doing so, thousands will die for every one that you spared. It reminds me a little bit about what happened in World War II in the Pacific. The Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, a military target, and which one was completely asleep. And they killed, I think it was 2,300 Americans on that day. And they would then avenge their death by sacrificing over 300,000. That isn't moral. It isn't right. It isn't appropriate. Under any circumstance, no matter how hateful and vengeful you may be, that's a very, very poor decision. And you can't be guided. And when you're fighting for your very existence, you can't allow yourselves to be manipulated this way. And so it's important for you to understand why Yahweh chose someone to speak to you whose head overrides his heart. Doesn't mean we don't feel. It doesn't mean that we don't have compassion. But it means that we are going to be moral. We're going to be judgmental. We're going to be right. God says, being right, correct, and honest will be the belt around his waist. Sadak, being accurate, upright, fair, just, vindicating, acquitting, will be the belt around his waist. And the trustworthy and reliable nature of his witness, amunah, of his restoring testimony, the integrity and dependability of this individual by keeping it real and genuine, truthful and valid. Amunah is from Aman, to support and to confirm that which is trustworthy and reliable, upholding that which is verifiable. It will serve to gird him, Izor. It's the belt and the sash around his manhood, his virility. It's from Chalatz, to be rescued and delivered, withdrawn and invigorated. Yashayah, salvation, is from Yahweh. Isaiah 11:5. I can't claim that I've always been right because knowing requires learning, and learning is a process. And that process requires time, focus, and thought. But this I can attest. Whenever I have been wrong, it was not by intent. And I've always corrected the record because as a reliable witness, I want you to be right about God. I doubt there's ever been anyone who has been as diligent as I have been over these past 24 years. Going back and correcting the books, augmenting them with what I have learned, and making certain that they are as correct and accurate, forthright as is possible. And that's a big job because this job is about learning and then sharing. And as you learn every day, you grow in understanding. And the more you understand, the more your thinking is refined, the more accurately you see the entire picture. One of the great examples is that we are prone to come up with some explanation for what happened in 33 CE with the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. And one of the first things we must do is to realize that the presentation that's found in the Christian New Testament is completely inaccurate. And then once we recognize just how spurious and how wrong that text is, and I don't say that casually, I have written 5 800-page volumes to share that with you under the name Twistianity. Then you still know that God fulfilled Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim, and it had to be through someone. And your first instinct is, okay, let's use the name of Yosha ben Nun, because it means salvation is from Yah. Yahweh saves. But if God intended that to be the mechanism through whom he was going to save, why didn't he say so? Why isn't there a single prophecy that suggests that's the case? Why is the second to the last prophet and Zechariah condemn the only other person named Yosha and says he's such a filthy priest that he is rendered incompetent. And why does God say that everything is going to be fulfilled through Dode if he didn't intend for Dode to be the man through whom he was going to achieve the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, and Bakurim? And so as you read more and you read that the only eyewitness accounts of what happened on those 3 days in 33 CE were written by Dode in first person in his Mizmor, well, then you know that he's the one who did it, which means there was no person by the name of Jesus or any other phony name you want to apply to him. Didn't exist. Well, that realization, along with the realization that you've learned that Dode was the one who did these things, is so transformational that anything you have said regarding what you may have previously written needs to reflect that great discovery, including why or how Dode came to this realization that he should volunteer, why he chose to do this, and why God accepted this solution. And then proclaim it as loudly and as clearly and as boldly as words allow to encourage God's people, Yisrael and Yehudim, to reject the lies and accept the truth about their own. Now, as we progress, this next section is one that I turn to, and I have completely redone my translations of this whole section because I wanted to be as accurate as possible and have them reflect all I've learned along the way. And so I went back in and said, okay, I'm going to invest the time to get this next section right, because there has to be a message in the words that follow as they speak of a variety of different animals that is symbolic of the work of the Choter and those that either he is impugning with the rod or that he is revealing through the staff. And I want to share with you that result. So I think now, in fact, I know now that the animals in the list which follows in Yeshaya, Isaiah 11 are symbolically important. They convey concepts which help us understand the players and their affinities as we enter the last days. For example, the Zeeb wolf is representative of Christianity and the trouble it has caused to Jews while leading the world away from the realization that Dode is the Kabesh, the lamb who fulfilled Passover. As we move forward, the Nemer is the most challenging of these terms. It is a black panther and a camouflage leopard. It, however, is most closely aligned linguistically with the Nimrod. And Nimrod was the representation of what became Osiris and Dionysus, Bacchus, Tammuz in the Babylonian religion, and later the myth of the Jesus Christ character. He is the one who was killed and resurrected at this time of year. He and his wife claimed to be the mother of God and the queen of heaven when she claimed that the sun impregnated her during the vernal equinox on an Easter Sunday, and commemorating Ashtaroth, such that 9 months later on the winter solstice, December 25th, she could give birth to the son of the sun. And so Neymar speaks of God and of the Babylonian effect of Christianity on Christianity and Judaism and Islam with their commingling of truth and lies, religion and politics. This takes us to the Gadi, which will be the next animal. This goat represents Elia, the prophet famous for his sparkling oratory against religion and politics, and especially his opposition to the Lord of Babylon and the Mother of God myths also emerging from Babel. As we read further, it is the Choter who is the Egel. He is the bull who, as the Adam of Parah, is leading the children of Israel back into the garden where it all began. He and the Kafir, the lion, denoting Dode, are therefore the two men who were raised and prepared to be sacrificed to resolve Israel's rebellious and recalcitrant behavior. As we progress, the Ne'ar Katon, which is properly translated as the younger servant, who is readily determined and known as a slightly less acclaimed man. Well, he is the Choter again. This time in his role of the lesser luminary or moon, reflecting the greater luminary's light, with Dode representing the sun. While the Bashar bodies of both men are sacrificed to fulfill Pesach and Towrah, the lesser known and younger of these two serves as the king's Bashar, herald. While I may be the same age as Dode when he passed away in his first life this year, still, I am a scant 3,000 years younger than my king, so this would serve as the younger of the two. So now that you know the players with this introduction, let me read to you the text. Then the Zeeb, the wolf, the predatory mammal representing the most infamous Benjamite, Paul, the wolf in sheep's clothing responsible for Christianity, will be an alien, stirring up trouble and strife for a while with his quarrelsome and insidious plans, a gur. He will sojourn as a stranger, congregating with the flock while leading them astray, conspiring and scheming a harmful and treacherous, deceitful response by being rebellious, picking a fight by instigating an attack. Called perfect, doing so for a finite period of time. All against the Kabes lamb, an opposition to the dominant ram, which is used in the Torah in conjunction with the Passover lamb. And thus, his quarrel will be with Dode, David. And so it was. Christianity is nothing but a crude counterfeit of Dode. He was robbed of his accolades and his achievements. And the Neymar, the black panther and camouflage leopard, symbolic of Nimrod and Babylon, will stretch out against the Gadi goat, representing Elia. Then the Egel bull, the ox from Agal, to come full circle, symbolic of the Adam of Parah, who is a goy leading Yisrael back to the garden, and the Kafir, the lion, which is used as a metaphor for Yehudah and for Dode. And it's from Kafesh, to connect, and Kafar, to be covered, both of whom were raised and prepared to be sacrificed for the rebellious and the recalcitrant. while merry. They were weaned and prepared for the resistant and embittered, such that they will be together at the same time. And we will. And so Ne'ar Kanton, this younger servant who is easily determined and readily known as a slightly less acclaimed man, the attendant of a bit who is a bit lower in the social status, but can be known on behalf of the scattered sheep, will motivate, lead, and guide them. He will direct and influence them, being influential among them as he attempts to direct their voluntary movements in the right direction. Yashayah, deliverances from Yah, 11:6. A marvelous story when you understand what each of these animals represents and how they were connected by the verbs that Yahweh inspired through Yashayah. So as Yashayah will remind us in his 17th chapter, as the final Zeroah, the Choter is going to serve as the Parah, the fruitful and productive bovine, on the day of the herald and on behalf of the adulterous woman that is Yisrael, so that she can not only be betrothed to her returning Messiah and King, but also become productive again. Both will serve as the ultimate Ra'ah. Well, they're going to serve our shepherd, Dode. So with the harvest secure, the Aryeh, the lion of Yahudah, the beloved of Yah, along with the Bakar, which is the insightful and considerate bull of Yom Teruah, symbolically consumed the chaff, being blown away by the Ruach spirit of Yahweh at this time. The chaff represents those who will not be entering the millennial kingdom. So Yashayah, inspired by Yahweh, proclaims the Parah, this fruitful and productive bull, this abundantly prolific and industrious heifer who enriches and empowers. And the Dob bear was presented throughout the Torah and prophets as the most fiercely protective of her cubs, a motherly omnivore from Dob, to be strengthened and become powerful, to capitalize on all life has to offer, will choose to be shepherded. Or will be led to nourishing pastures and flowing waters, choosing to be protected and to be guided. Together, their youth and the children they bear will lie down and dwell. The Ariyah lion as Yahudah, like the Bakar, insightful and considerate bull, the caring and observant sacrificial bovine, shall consume the chaff, the dry and brittle stalks and husks of the grain comprising stubble. This is Yashayah. Liberty is from Yah, Isaiah 7. A yonek, a shoot and sucker, is so similar to Choter, a shoot and sucker. It would, of course, be unwise to render it any other way than as stated. This is particularly true when we consider that the Choter is Satan's nemesis. Yahweh equips him with his 7 spirits to deploy him and spiritual warfare against the adversary. He is the one who will have earned the right to celebrate over the Pethen, the servant's vacated den. It is the Gamal, the bountifully rewarded one, bestowing recompense, who will have acted to thwart Satan's agenda, stretching out his hand as Yada against the Siphoni, the venomous viper, this toxic serpent, who is the principal antagonist of God's people. Further, the Choter as the Adamah Parah, this bloodied red man of the earth who is productive and as a fruitful bull, will provide recompense on Yom Teruah, the day of the herald, on behalf of Yehudim and Yisrael. And just as the definition of Choter reveals, he is the one who will deal out whatever reward or punishment is actually deserved at that time. So with that introduction, let's consider the next statement, shall we? It reads, the yonek, the shoot and sucker, or perhaps a nursing infant. The branch which provides new life, a suckling child at the earliest stages of life. It is masculine singular. Will find great satisfaction, overtly delighted, great pleasure and enjoyment, actually having fun, over the hole or den of the Pethen, the serpent, the poisonous snake, and the venomous viper. It's from an unused root that means to twist. And of course, serpentine fashion. And upon the Ma'ura, the nest, the cavity in the ground where this reptile of a lesser light dwells, masculine singular, of the Siphoni, the venomous viper and toxic serpent, of the poisonous snake, also from an unused root that means to exude toxins, the Gamal, the bountifully rewarded one, bestowing recompense, the one who acts committing to deal out whatever reward or punishment is deserved, masculine singular, will place his hand over that den, will stretch out and put his hand and cast out and cast down, which is from Yada, to cast away, and Yada, the one who knows. So you question why Yahweh, through Yashayah, would reveal this regarding the Choter, that he is going to actually mock Satan, that he's going to be stretched out and extended as a tool to silence this deadly viper, the one that slithered out of the garden, the one who has become the god of religion, the one who is menacing Israel today through Muslims known as Allah. Should you wonder why Yahweh would reveal that his Choter would have this responsibility and would act this way, to be the one who, rather than cowering from Satan or denying Satan, would take him on head on. Mano a demono. Okay, that's not what's written there, but my paraphrase. Well, the answer is actually quite profound. Prior to God inspiring and equipping the Choter in this way, there wasn't a single Yehud, not one on the planet, who respected Yahweh's name, who recognized his son's achievements, who acknowledged the conditions of the covenant, who capitalized upon the purpose of the invitations to the restoring meanings, or knew where they were in the timeline and when the final events would play out. Every Jew, without exception, was estranged from God. And since this had been the case for 3,000 years, there was no possibility that it was going to magically change in the last 30 years. Yahweh needed a solution to get his people's attention. And as a result, he chose the Choter, equipped him to be a rod and a staff, a tool to bludgeon this venomous snake and his fellow demons, and as a sucker to promote new growth in the fallen stump that was Yisrael. Without what the seven spirits of Yahweh have achieved through him, well, quite frankly, there would have been no upcoming Shabuah harvest, no Teruah gleaning, no Kippurim homecoming, no Sukkah return to the garden. The promises God had made would go unfulfilled, and there would be no reason to return to the earth because there would be no covenant family or even a remnant of Yisrael. Satan, under those circumstances, would have prevailed. It is what he claims for himself in the book that he authored, Ezekiel. And should that sound melodramatic to you, I would encourage you to offer a different solution to the one that Yahweh proposed. I would even invite you to replicate what we have achieved together in exposing Satan's role in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam in the 13 volumes that I have written against those religions, or the 20 some odd that I have written to affirm Yahweh's role in the Torah, in the Bereth, in the Mikra, and with Yisrael. You think you have a better answer? Have at it. This is God's. While Jerusalem has been a den of iniquity since the conclusion of Dod's first of three lives, our Heavenly Father, frankly, he cannot allow Satan to continue to corrupt his home. Earth will become serpent-free during the 1,000 years of Sukkah. The absence of religion and politics, however, is only half of the equation, because for there to be abundant life, there must also be a restoration of that which is good and wholesome and true. And if we know this, so does God. And so Yahweh tells us that as a result of this work that he will achieve through his Choter, by essentially eliminating the toxicity of the adversary, we read the following comment. They will not be allowed to continue to perpetrate evil. And so they will not continue to mar, blemish, or corrupt anything on my set-apart mountain. Because the land shall be full of information which can be known about Yahweh, just as the waters cover the sea. Isaiah 11:9. I'm going to share some insights on this, and it'll be the conclusion of this episode 2 of our presentation on the Choter. As we come full circle and return back to Eden with the return of Yahweh and Dod on Yom Kippurim. The thing that will not be allowed thereafter is going to be religion and politics. Evil will be expunged from the earth, just as it was in Eden. And so they will not be able to mar, to blemish, or corrupt anything associated with Yahweh's set-apart mountain. And that means that I have absolute proof that the revelation that I was given from Yahweh, where God shared with me something that was really quite personal. He says, you're reading now in Yeshaya 17, with my last translation of it, the realization that as the Parah, this bloody red man of the earth who is fruitful, the Adamah Parah, as we read it in Numbers 19, that on Towrah, you are going to be the sacrifice for my people. And so based on that, I think God speaking to me, I think it's appropriate that I share with you how this is going to transpire. And he showed me the scene in my head. I've seen it all very clearly now. And one of the things that I've shared with you about it is that the Temple Mount has been completely cleansed of the hideous Islamic boil and repulsive scar that are currently there. The Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque are wiped away. And where the temple that Dod arranged to be built and Solomon constructed as the home for Yahweh's name, where it once stood, there's going to be a replica of the tent of the restoring witness, because that is why we will be there. And this statement affirms what I have said. They will not continue to mar, blemish, or corrupt anything within my set-apart mountain. One of the other insights that I had from Yahweh, which he has confirmed as well, is it says that the land will be full of information which can be known about Yahweh, just as the waters cover the sea. Is that Yahweh is actually going to, after my body is sacrificed for the preparation of God's people, in fact, for the very thing that we're going to learn about in an upcoming program about the preparation of Yisrael as the adulterous woman who is prepared to be betrothed to her king as he returns. That my sacrifice, once my body is put on its funeral pyre, and has Elia orchestrating the scene as he did 40 Yobel, and I guess it would be 80 Yobel. No, 40 Yobel, 888 years earlier, 2,888 years earlier. That during that process, Yahweh is not only going to ignite this great fire with the flames leaping up to the heavens, he's also going to release a torrent of cleansing waters. They're not only going to wash away those who have come to harm God's people, but they're also going to cover the land of Yisrael, just as the waters cover the sea. And so emerging from the Temple Mount will be copious amounts of cleansing waters underneath the funeral pyre of the Adamah Parah. And that is precisely what God is addressing here. And quite frankly, I want you to experience it. As I've shared over the last year, I have made it emphatically clear that the Islamic boils, these scars on the Temple Mount, known as the Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque, will be destroyed when the Choter, serving as the Adam of Parah, offers his Bashar body as a witness to be bludgeoned by Satan on the day of the herald during Towrah, the morning of September 24th, 2033. The last remnant of Hasatan will, and his corporeal manifestation will be gone, will be removed. And this blow against me will seal Hasatan's fate, because it will restore the mortal remnant of Yisrael while dispatching the immortal spirit of the adversary to Sheol. And from this moment forward, the earth will be a place where Yahweh is known and he is loved. And this is the mission of the Choter. One God will pursue through him to prevail. So I thank you for listening to this episode of the Yahowah blog, brought to you by Wookie and Yada, and produced by the lovely Leah, as we thank you for inviting us into your homes and into your lives. Thank you again for listening.